this crap? 72 and sunny 2 days ago. Now it's 30 degrees and we got 4 inches of snow last night, and most of it already melted away. That's why it doesn't look like a full 4 inches, but there was a lot of snow out here. I don't know how many of you guys noticed the difference here, but we got the trail all nice and cleaned up. This other trail in a different part of the property, I don't think I showed you guys this yet. We're at the property right now doing a little walk around. I'm just checking on the property since all the snow that we got this past day here. So over here checking things out, seeing what everything looks like. Most of it all melted off already because it was about 23, 24 degrees last night, and blizzard conditions, because it went from being in like 50, 60, 70s to then like snow that stuck, 4 inches of snow that stuck last night. So it got really cold, and then it got up to 45 degrees today and it all melted off. So I don't know how that happens, but it did. So anyways, I'm just out here checking on some locations for another stand site here on the property. And I thought I would go over this topic with you guys. For the guys that are interested in this, cool. If you guys are not interested in outdoor stuff, hunting, deer management stuff in general, this is not the video for you, and you might as well leave now, because I'm going to bore you if you absolutely hate the outdoors type stuff or deer hunting, property stuff in general. But if you guys want to learn something new, or you are interested in that, stay tuned. So growing up where I am familiar with hunting, this is how hunting has always been for me. Usually the properties and areas that I've always hunted for most of my hunting career have been around, you know, areas with a lot of homes, subdivisions, trailer parks nearby, or lots of ag land, etc. So, you know, it's kind of a mixture of those things. So, you know, when it comes to choosing a stand location for me, and the way I grew up, is, you know, you actually use some of those things to your benefit, and you hunt according to the structure of the human activity around your property. And it sounds really weird because I'll talk to my buddy about this and he just doesn't get it. They're out in Pennsylvania where they hunt, they hunt saddles on ridges, and they hunt, little knolls and, ravine bottoms or pinch points based on topography. You can look at a map and say, that's going to be a good spot to, set up because, based on the topography, the deer are probably going to get pushed down through there, or they're going to travel this slope, or whatever. It's a totally different game because they're hunting huge, massive blocks of timber that just connects for miles and miles and miles and miles. So, you're hunting a totally different type of deer. They're all wild, they're all whitetails, but you're hunting a totally different type of deer versus like where I'm hunting here. I'm not going to give out the coordinates where I'm at, but the properties that I owned, other than one of them, there's one exception. It's my Indiana property. That's the only property that I've ever hunted that's like way out in the middle of nowhere, and there's no housing, there's no human activity really close by. Therefore, I'm still learning how to hunt that property the best way, because it doesn't have some of the things that I'm used to, like, housing additions close by, or just houses along the back of the property, like areas that you can basically go, okay, the deer definitely aren't going to be coming out of there or going to there, so how do I want to hunt around that, because they're going to try to avoid those areas. And that's where you find basically man-made pinch points. And something I will tell you guys, that when it comes to hunting areas with a lot of human pressure, in terms of not necessarily human hunting pressure, but just human pressure around an area, the areas that I tend to see the most deer activity are the areas closest to the human activity, which sounds really like, in theory, like a guy coming from a background of hunting out in the middle of nowhere and hunting topography and stuff like that, or thermal cover versus, hardwood cover or whatever, they wouldn't get it because it's not their hunting style. But it's something that's great to learn, and you'd be surprised at how much higher the opportunity can be for hunting deer very close to a lot of human activity. Just keep in mind, I said how high the opportunity could be, can be, not necessarily, oh, there's going to be a bigger deer if you're closer to people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the opportunity can be greater because it can really narrow down the area that those deer can go which can, again, not always will, but it can produce some amazing hunting results because you're using the surrounding city or additions or whatever to kind of funnel those deer down. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I bought this property, is because it was a giant funnel wedged in between a housing development, a trailer park. I mean, it just two busy roads, and basically the property just goes right down the middle of that, and it creates a massive funnel. So I'm actually going to be looking for another stand location over here based on what I saw from the tree right over here this past season. I was looking over this river here, and essentially what I ended up seeing a lot of was two big things. If you look that direction a couple hundred yards, there's a huge line of houses, like a subdivision all along this side over there where the woods end. The deer, kid you not, almost every single time I was out here, I saw dozens of deer walking right along the back side of those houses, staying away from the deep part of the timber. I don't know why, but they did. I go over there, come to find out at the end of the season, there are deer highways right along the backs of those houses. And I don't know if it's because they find security in that commotion, or if they know that the predators stay away from that, or I don't know why they do it, but they just do. So there's houses all along the back here, and these deer, just like clockwork every day, walked along the back side of those houses, stayed in the woods, but walked close to the housing, and it turns out to be a great location to set up. So coming over here, I also noticed from that stand behind me that I was just talking about, how I could see off in the distance over there. Well, also I could see off in the distance over here, again, housing all along the back here, all along this side. These deer really moved along the back side of the housing, back and forth, right along the edge of the woods, just inside, along all of the development over here. So we're gonna go over here, and I'm gonna be looking for a location based on the housing and the development. When you're hunting areas like this, and you're hunting based on, you know, obviously the deer movement, but the human activity, it really helps you narrow down where to hunt and how to determine your wind direction. You get to hunt accordingly, because it's pretty simple. If your wind's blowing directly, all the human activity and the housing and all that stuff, there's a good chance the deer are not going to be coming out of there, because why is a deer going to be coming out of this guy's garage over here? Pretty simple. We're going to be coming over here, and we're going to see the backside here and try to find out what the best location is going to be to set up on based on the human activity, the housing and all that stuff, and show you guys what I'm talking about. So we're coming through here. You can see there's a trail right down through here along the river. But this, I can't really tell if it's actually deer, if this is from coons running across this bank here, but we'll find out soon enough. But essentially back in here, there's a lot of bedding. And another thing to note, deer are not scared to bed close to human activity as long as they're familiar with it. Now, if you live out in the absolute boonies, you're probably not going to have a deer bedded right next to your barn if human activity is not something they're very accustomed to. In this location, they are. So there's housing right on the other side of all these bushes here, housing all across here. And we're going to show you some of the main trails coming along the back side of here. So right here, you can actually see the whites of the back side of some of these houses here, all along this stretch here. I'm not going to go too much closer to give away the exact homes, just in case anybody would happen to recognize them. I don't want anybody giving away, you know, anybody's private information here online. But there's a major deer crossing, and I saw them cross here a lot of times last season. They would run down here to this low spot, and it's a great crossing point, and they'd run up this bank. You can see all the tracks, right? Running right up this bank, which is actually pretty steep. And then they'd cut right through here, and they would just cut straight down this path right down through here. And so what you have to keep in mind is the fact that, oh, there goes a rabbit running off. But what you guys have to keep in mind the fact of is you can hunt areas like this very easily. It's very predictable. Like when you hunt this location, you know what's going to happen, because there's one crossing here, and if you look right here, there's a giant pile of logs all built up, so they're not crossing there. Over there, if you look a little further down, the bank is way too steep. I've never seen them cross over there. In the 25-30 times I sat in that stand, they never crossed straight up that steep bank right there. They either crossed way down over there behind those other houses, walking along the backside of those houses, or they crossed right here, which makes it very easy to hunt a location like this as long as you hunt the location properly. You don't want to hunt to this side of the trail, because then if your wind is blowing straight out of the west, you're going to be blowing the deer before they even cross the river here. You're going to bust them. And the other thing is too, then if you have a wind coming out of the east, so that you don't bust the deer coming from this direction, now you're going to bust the deer that could come from the big block of timber up along the river behind you, from any of the bedding in here. So what you want to do is you want to hunt on the back side of this trail where they cross. That way you can hunt it with a specific wind, and you're pretty much bulletproofed in this spot, and there's almost a guarantee that these deer are not going to bust you by scent. At least if you move around on the stand a lot, if you make a lot of commotion, that's on you, but at least you know that you can have a location that if you hunt the wind properly and you access it properly, you have a pretty darn good spot. So in this location, what we would actually end up doing is hunting this oak tree right here. You can see this tree right here. It's got a lot of nice cover down low. You could probably sneak in by water. We actually have a small section of the property that goes out to the road over there, and the reason I would do that is because I'm not going to walk through their backyards to get in here, and if I'm going to hunt this on a west wind, it wouldn't really make much sense for me to walk through my property, loop around and come up this trail, and then my west wind would blow out all of this bedding over here, or at least let the deer know that I came through. So I'd have a much higher chance of messing up my hunt. I could either come in by water, or what I would have to do is make my own access path along the backyards of all these houses here within my woods, within the property line, which can be done, but then again, it could just be a ton of extra work, and it could be unnecessary when I could just get some hip waders or chest waders, come in on the road there if I'm doing it as a morning hunt in the dark, walk down the road with my bow, drop down into the river, walk along the bank, because of course the woods end right here. This is just somebody's backyard. Walk down along the bank and just climb up here, because we do own a strip down here on both sides of the river, right along the edge up to the road. And then I could sneak up into this tree, which has a lot of cover, has a nice amount of back cover from the deer coming up over there. And then what that would do is put me right on them when they come up this bank. They'd run up the bank right here, and then right there's that tree. It'd be a 10-yard quartering away shot, either right here by this tree, or they take another 2 steps and I could smoke them slightly quartering away right there as well. It's a little tip on how I hunt based on human activity, and it can be done all different ways. Guys that hunt completely different types of property might think this is kind of, like, oh, well, that's cheating, because your deer conditioned to people. Well, let me just tell you this. Just because deer conditioned to people, that does not mean they're conditioned to hunters. And the deer may not know the difference between a hunter and a non-hunter walking down the street, obviously, but the moment you set a boot, cross that invisible barrier that they know human activity does not typically cross, those deer are on high alert instantly. And people will think, oh, like if you're hunting city deer, or deer nearby cities and stuff, you're hunting dumb deer. Your deer are, they're dumb, they don't have a care in the world for human activity. It's way easier to shoot them, which may be true if you're like driving around or walking around the park where they're completely accustomed to the people walking around on the trails and stuff. But like back in here, nobody comes back in here but me. So as soon as boots are on the ground within this invisible barrier that these deer know human activity doesn't cross, in terms of crossing that line, they're on high alert, and they know something's up, and then they're just as smart as your deer that you guys hunt way out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm actually going to show you guys another location that I set up based on human activity, so you guys could see what I'm talking about here. So, we've got all of this, nice bedding down in here, a lot of tall grass, a lot of smaller trees, a lot of down timber, and, a lot of opportunity for the deer to bed down here, hide, and stay hidden from human activity if they're trying to avoid it, which they do that a lot down here. They do bed in here a lot. We see a lot of deer down here in the deer season, bedded up in here whenever we do have to come down here, whether it's, to retrieve a deer or what have you. But where they travel the most, speaking of deer tracks, there's lots of them around here, but where they travel the most to cross is down over by the human activity. And now some people might just say it's coincidental that the deer are favoring the human activity, but I would beg to differ, because when I went to check out some public hunting areas with a buddy of mine, we went down there and you wouldn't believe the amount of deer that we saw and the activity that we saw along a highway, for example. And you know, we'd look through thousands of acres of ground, looking around, not literally inch for inch all of it, but you know, cutting through and looking for deer sign and bedding and stuff like that. In the area we found the most of it was along a busy road right on the backside of the fence, keeping the deer from running across the highway, or at least hoping it keeps, you know, deer and raccoons or whatever from running into the highway. Doesn't always work, but the point is, we've looked through all this ground, and go figure, the closest spot to the road is where the most trails were, the most bedding, where we saw the most deer as we were scouting. I was like, you've got to be joking. But I don't think it's coincidental. I think it's because they kind of grow and adapt to the fact that most people, when they're out in the woods, they avoid those areas thinking too much activity, there's not going to be any deer, there's too many cars going by, you know, too many people walking down the side of the road. We're going to avoid those areas, you know, because probably no deer there. Where did we end up seeing most of the deer? Right by the road. You know why? Because the hunters who were back in the deer's area were avoiding the road. And the deer knew that between all this deep timber, let's say, in these houses, there was this thin strip that was untouched and unpressured between all the main timber and the development or the road or what have you. So here we are at another location here. As you guys can see over here, there's houses all along here, right? But these trails all run down this bank. Where they cross the most is right behind this stand right here, right over there. You see where this point comes out? They cross right along there, they hug along those houses, and then they cut into the timber. I don't know why, and I don't think it's coincidental, but they do that like clockwork pretty much every single day. They go right down across, right up there, and they hug the trail right along the back of the houses. But that's going to be my argument on stand location based on human activity and human pressure. Human presence maybe be the better word, because they're not necessarily pressuring them. The deer are kind of accustomed to human activity and just minding its own business and not really interfering with their life, but the deer live with it being close by because they're used to it. It doesn't bother them. So anyways, guys, hopefully that helps some of you guys out. For you guys that are wondering, you know, is it even worth looking into properties that are close to a lot of human activity? Is it even worth hunting public ground, you know, that's surrounded by human activity in terms of like just human presence surrounding the area? And for you guys wondering, can you really kill deer with a lot of human presence close by, you know, minding their own day-to-day lives? Yes, you can, and it can be very effective, and it can make your job of hunting much easier because it really narrows down where they move in some cases. And I don't want to say it can make it easy, but it can definitely help you out. It went from being sunshine and blue skies to now snowing again. I don't know how, because it's like 42 degrees out, but it's snowing again. So I'm going to end this video right here. Hopefully it helps some of you guys out there with stand location ideas. It's that time of year. People are setting stands, trying to reevaluate what they did last year wrong in terms of locations, maybe looking for a new spot. Hopefully this helps some of you guys out that are hunting those areas surrounding a lot of human presence. If it did, great. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Don't forget that if you want to enter to win our truck that we're giving away this month, it's a beautiful 5-speed manual, 12-valve Cummins, dually sport, plus $5,000 cash. One of you guys got to take it home. Might as well be you. Thank you guys so much. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.